Hello, and welcome to the second Pork Academy session about the new consumer campaign, Taste What Pork Can Do. My name is Sarah Williams.
And my name is Alexa Gormley, and we are two members of the 2024 Real Pork Scholars Program cohort.
I am a second-year master's student at the University of Minnesota under Dr. Lee Johnston, and together we are exploring the effects of feed additives on sow performance and the microbiome. And after Minnesota, I'll be headed to University of Guelph for vet school in the fall. And Dr. Johnston and I are really excited about this research because we think the sow microbiome is a great and novel approach in animal science that can really benefit the pork industry by exploring maybe new pathways that can really help with sow health performance as well as greater nutritional access.
And again, my name is Alexa Gormley, and I am currently studying swine nutrition at North Carolina State University, and my particular research focus is on nutritional interventions meant to mitigate some of the negative impacts of weaning stress on intestinal health. In addition, I also work to investigate the feasibility of utilizing waste products from associated industries so that we can kind of improve the sustainability of not only the swine industry, but also those associated industries. I'm originally from Iowa, however, I didn't grow up with any pig experience or background until I became interested in food animal agriculture at my undergraduate university, Iowa State University. I'm very proud to say that I'm from the #1 pork producing state, and now I am lucky enough to conduct my research in the #3 pork producing state, North Carolina. So thank you all for having me and Sarah here today and for the overall support of the Real Pork Scholars Program. So, as we begin today, I would like you to take just a few moments to review the antitrust statement that is here on the screen. Thank you. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. David Newman, the Senior Vice President for Market Growth at the National Pork Board. Dr. Newman leads a talented team of marketing, retail, food service, nutrition, and business intelligence professionals who, working alongside NPB's agency, Barkley OKRP, just launched Taste What Pork Can Do. This exciting digital-first campaign represents the Pork Checkoff's latest efforts to build a bigger appetite for pork among millennials and Gen Z in a whole new way. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Newman and his team to the stage to find out why bacon is just the beginning.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time. I told somebody it's very hard when you're in between lunch and happy hour to have this conversation. So first things first, we're not going to talk about the gut microbiome. That's the first thing. And second, we obviously did not color coordinate our shirts today, so one person didn't get the memo. But what we are here to do today is we're going to have some fun. Most importantly, because we are going to talk about promotion, and we're going to talk about marketing, and we are going to talk about this new brand campaign that we have just launched. So when I say just launched, and we spoke about this yesterday as well, it is a long effort that we're going to walk you through today. So what we want you to do during this time is really take in the process and understand what we did. We want to help you understand what got us here and also where we're going next. That's really important. And we want to leave plenty of time also for challenges and questions or anything that you want to know about the campaign, because at the end of the day, the 60,000 farmers that we represent as part of the Pork Checkoff, this is your brand campaign. You invested in it. Our board of directors at the National Pork Board were key in getting this done, and we need to help you really understand to become brand ambassadors what the focus is. Because what this really is, and we're going to hear this redundantly over and over again, is this is really about the future of the pork industry. And tonight, this afternoon, out at the pork tent, we're going to be celebrating that this is the 40th year anniversary of the checkoff here in the United States. So it was formed in 1985 under the Act and Order. So we are under governmental oversight, if you will, as a checkoff, the same as beef and soy and the numerous other checkoffs that exist in this country. But what we really do, right, is three very primary things. So under the Act and Order, we have an obligation to promote product, we have an obligation to do research, and we have an obligation to educate. So when you think about education, think about Port Quality Assurance Plus. Think about transport quality assurance, those on-farm metrics that we use. When you think about research, think about our pork scholars, gut microbiome, animal health. Dr. Odekoven was speaking earlier today about the National Swine Health Strategy, PRRS, African swine fever prevention, a lot of different things. Could be swine nutrition, could be a whole plethora of things. But it also can be about the consumer. And that's really, when we talk today, this is a totally different session than maybe what you would traditionally see at World Pork Expo, and certainly different than what you would see at a lot of producer meetings. Because today is really talking about a top-down approach. We're not talking about feed efficiency and pigs born alive and survivability and marketing and all the things that we have out here in the vendor booths. Rather, we're going to work this backwards from the consumer and start talking about why it's critical and why right now is a transformational time for the pork business. So when we're thinking about this, I often say this over and over again, and I said it yesterday, and I'm going to say it 1,000 more times in my career, but the entire pork industry exists for one sole reason, and that is that a consumer walks into a retail grocery store, they walk into a restaurant, they buy pork, they eat it, and they like it enough to repeat a purchase. And if that doesn't happen literally billions and billions of times over, it doesn't matter whether you're selling hog slats or feeders or trucks or trailers or anything else, there's no value in the business, right? So ultimately, this really comes down to a matter of the consumer and a matter of demand. And across the team here that I'm really honored to work with every day, and everybody else you see in the really bright, vibrant shirts, when you think about this and you see it, everybody here is working on your behalf to really think about those promotion, research, and education activities, okay? So we're gonna level set you, and we're gonna talk about how we got here, and then we're gonna take it to the next step, because I'm excited about the fact that we're no longer talking about what we're going to do, we're in market. Right? This is now about what we are doing. For the last 6 months or a year, I've been saying, hey, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming. And we launched on May 6th, so we're here. And Neil especially is going to give you some examples of the media and some examples of activations that we're doing with retailers and food service and other activities throughout the country. So I just want to level set you, because I have been on the job at the National Pork Board leading the market growth team for 2 years ago yesterday. And whenever I first came into the business, I've been in the hog business my entire life, but when I first started here in June in 2023, the demeanor at the World Pork Expo was not what it is today, right? Cutout was not at $106, $107 in June of 2023. Rather, our producers, were facing, in many cases, $20 to $30 a head loss. And so it really started to begat this question all over the country, is what are we doing about demand, right? Something is broken. What are we doing about demand? What are we doing to really think about that consumer and what drives them? So consumers today, right, they have more choices than any consumer has probably ever had in the history of humans. And when we think about protein, and we're going to talk about protein having a moment, it really started to talk about if we're going to exist 40 years from now, and we want this industry to be successful, and we want young people to come into the business, we're going to have to start thinking about demand in a different way. And so Patrick's also going to talk about how we coalesce the rest of the business around this, but our state associations that Mia's going to talk about, our producers, our National Pork Industry Forum, that's our voting delegate body, all the people that we represent, and our board of directors ranked demand, and specifically domestic demand, as priority number one. What are we doing about demand in this country? And so I want to level set you here about our number one export country right now out of the United States. Anybody? Mexico, right? Over $2.5 billion of value to us. South Korea, Southeast Asia, Canada, right? All over the world, U.S. pork touches populations of people, where pork, by the way, is very, very culturally relevant. Pork is still one of the top proteins in the world. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But we really need to think about this, of why we're talking about domestic demand so much, is really when you start to look under that 70-30 split. If you take 100% of our production in this country in 2025 and in 2024, right, we're talking about 28 billion pounds of total production. That's a lot of bacon. That's a lot of loins. That's a lot of hams. That's a lot of picnics. That's a lot of primal pieces, right? That's also a lot of byproducts and offal that we distribute all over the world. But when you start to narrow this down, because today's talk's not about international, what I want you to understand is we're going to keep the foot on the gas on the international marketplace, because it has been a massive win for U.S. farmers for the last 30 years. But the world is ever changing. I think you know that if you've watched the news at all in the last year, especially in the last 3-4 months especially, you know that there's a lot of global dynamics that are changing on an ever-changing by minute basis. So this international piece is crucially important, and that U.S. pig, that American flag pin that you see there, that is our international promotion and marketing effort that we use. We literally license that pig to do promotional campaigns in Colombia, in South Korea, in Japan, all over the world. And so through our partners at U.S. Meat Export Federation, I was going to call him out, but he just walked out the door, so very conveniently that happens. When we think about that market, that's really important. But this does lay a framework to say that last 25 years, we've put a huge push on that market. But for the last 10 years, we have been mostly absent from a promotional campaign that just really specifically thinks about the 20 billion pounds of product that we consume at home. So this is about saying, if we can really pour some gas on the fire, both internationally and domestically, right? The goal is we sell, and our strategic vision at the National Pork Board, and specific to demand, says more people eating more pork more often. Simple, but strategic, right? And I didn't say more people eating more pork at a lower price. I said more people eating more pork more often. So this is about really focusing, and today is really about focusing on that large piece of the pie, the 70% of our production that stays here within the U.S., all right? So when we think about promotional campaigns, you'll also say, this is not new. All right, this is not the first time that the National Pork Board has done a promotional campaign. Is it, Diane? Not at all, right? So when someone out here on the street, especially someone who's been in the business for a very long time, says, what is the most successful promotional campaign the pork industry has ever had, what do they say? Okay, don't say that anymore, okay? All right, but you can say it now. We're in a safe space. Because back in 1985, when this started, The Other White Meat actually launched in 1987. Okay, and there's been many iterations of promotional campaigns. As you can see, we had Pork Be Inspired. We had Pork Don't Be Blah. We had a lot of pushes that were very specific and targeted. Jose is going to speak this afternoon about some of his background and his work in driving this campaign. But one of our largest success areas has actually been focusing on the multicultural market. And we're not taking that push away either, because if you look at the demographics of the 350 million people in this country and where we're going over the next 10, 20, 30 years, it is a very multicultural melting pot, right? Of people coming from all over the world where they already find pork to be very culturally relevant, part of their everyday meal set. So it's really important that we start to do this. The goal and the point of what we're going to talk about today is stop doing small individual projects and stop doing blitzes, which are these, just one-off campaigns that we've done many, 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 many times, and let's silo all this together and let's put it into one unified effort around the new campaign, which is Taste What Pork Can Do. All right, so we don't raise pigs the way we raised 40 years ago, and our consumer doesn't look anything like they looked 40 years ago either, right? I mean, if you see, no one in that table on the left-hand side was thinking about putting a picture of that ham on Instagram in 1985. right? So our consumer base is just drastically changing. And when we start thinking about this consumer, you're going to hear about some of the data that we collected, because this wasn't done in a silo here in Clive, Iowa. This was an effort on behalf of our team that is very data-driven, that says when we start collecting data on consumers and understanding what the future consumer of pork looks like, there's some pretty scary statistics. And when you think about that chart, think about it from right to left. The silent generation is the oldest generations of Americans, right? And then you have Gen Zs following all the way on the left. Now, there are two other generations coming next, right? Gen Alpha and Gen Beta. But when we start thinking about the consumption of these younger consumers, and this is fresh pork consumption, by the way, look at the graph. What this graph tells you is that the children of boomers and then the children's children, and as you make your way down that line generationally, are eating significantly less pork than their parents or grandparents consumed, right? And now the buying power in this country is actually in the hands of Gen Zs and millennials, right? They're the people who have children. They're the people who are, we could just say, middle-aged, right? Very active in their career. They're the people who are driving decisions. And this slide, which I think is really, really important, is saying that we can't continue to do campaigns that just focus on older generations. Many of those previous campaigns that we launched in the past were very focused on baby boomer generation, who, by the way, found pork very culturally relevant. And this has seen the world over, by the way. So this is about saying we've got to think about who that future consumer becomes as we start to move forward. Now, the next thing about consumers. I don't need to tell anybody at the World Pork Expo why they should eat more pork. Fair? Right? You guys all over-index on pork. So if we start thinking about building a smart strategy, and you go back to some of those previous campaigns, The Other White Meat, Be Inspired, or others, many of those were very broad national campaigns when marketing was very different. They were billboards along the highway. They were magazine ads in Better Homes and Gardens. They were, right? They were very traditional forms of media, right? Once again, everybody in the world wasn't holding a cell phone in their hand, which is, by the way, how everything you buy nearly is marketed to you. You know that. That's why whenever the scholars introduced this, they said a very digital forward campaign. So when you start thinking about this, the data we have today tells us more about the consumer than we've ever had at our fingertips. And here's what it says from a general standpoint. Most of the people in this country are in very low pig density population areas. And I said this yesterday, and I think it resonates quite well. There are more people between LA and Bakersfield than there are between Houston, Texas, and Fargo. And it's not very far. So when we start thinking about the 40 million people in California, and we start thinking about the massive population in Texas and Florida and New York, we've really got to learn to fish where the fish are. And that's where we can be very strategic instead of thinking about this from a national standpoint. You're going to hear more about this in just a few minutes. But this is about saying if we're going to truly make a difference and we're going to truly try to change the tide on pork, we've got to hit those large population areas so that we can actually remind these consumers why pork plays a significant role in their everyday choices. And when I say plays a role for eating more pork more often, we have to think about what drives them. So what drives the future consumer? It's actually what drives the consumer today when it comes to pork, and you're going to hear this again in a minute. Gen Zs and millennials, one, they crave taste. That's amongst all foods, right? Taste and flavor is number one. Second, balance. Balance lends to nutrition. Balance lends to good for me, good for my family, good for my kids. And I think this is a great opportunity when we talk about being a transformational time, by the way, because when I think about nutrition, protein is having a moment. How many of you have picked up a pack of food in the last 30 days that told you how many grams of protein were in it? Everybody raise your hand. Okay. Okay? You may not have read the label, but if you are looking and now you can start looking, you will notice, right? Protein's having a moment, and it's animal protein is having a moment very specifically. The data is very clear on that. And this is time to start capitalizing, right, on the things that drive them. And the last piece is around versatility. So is it convenient? Is it easy to eat, right? I said this yesterday as well. I mean, we're rolling into the summer months, and those of you that have young kids know your kids are more busy than you are, which is amazing, right, today. When we start thinking about traveling baseball or traveling volleyball or any of the other things that are going on, and we start thinking about what matters to people, quick and easy, convenient, right, good for me, what can I also do to feed my body what it needs? So we have really mined this data down to say what matters to consumers the most, and then we've got to celebrate it by having fun and show them that we're more than just an occasion-based meat. Right? This is more than just a holiday ham. This is more than just thinking about an occasional breakfast item or a breakfast occasion, if you will. Every single day, right? When I think about pork and I think about taste and flavor and I think about convenience and even when I think about balance, I always start with thinking about bacon. Can we all say, thank God for bacon? Right? Thank God for bacon. Okay, so it's right. This is huge because you're going to hear the strategy has to be more than just fresh. We have to celebrate what consumers already love, and bacon is having a moment. What do you do to make something more flavorful? You put bacon on it. Okay, that's what you do. So we have some of these known quantities, especially when you think about bacon, sausage, ham. Translating that though into ground pork. Translating that into ribs, translating that especially into loins is crucially important. And this slide is something that I think is really important when we start talking about why we keep saying this is a transformational time for the business. There's a lot going on in the protein sector right now, okay? There's a lot going on in the poultry business. There is a whole lot going on in the beef business when we think about price and availability and supply. All those things do factor into this equation. But when we start thinking about how we can position this for the next 40 years, I think this is really crucial. And I think as you start to think about this Taste What Pork Can Do campaign, we're saying this is not going to be a fixed moment in time, and this is what we're going to do, the strategy we're getting ready to tell you about. This is what we're doing now because it's what matters for our consumers now. But what we're doing today is not going to be the same thing that we're doing in June of 2030. Because everything will have changed by June of 2030. And if we do our jobs and the rest of the industry does their jobs, thinking about how we elevate pork for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, we're going to have to think about how to adjust on the fly, right? And how to adjust to what the consumers need and what they want because it is ever changing. So just a little framework to tee this off for the campaign because I think you're going to see a lot of passion and excitement from our team, but this is for you, the producers. You paid for this, right? And I mentioned about you demanding demand. This is our answer to your really mandate to us that we start to think about how we think about promotion moving forward. So I'm going to pass this over to Patrick and let him take it from here, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. So thank you. Here you go.
Thank you. You didn't get applause yesterday, just saying. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. So when we started the new campaign, there's a couple of things, and everybody will ask, what's different this time? Okay, and we can sum it up at one thing. We have to change the way we think about our product, right? In the beginning, it was about, when we went to the other white meat, it was transformational because we had to lean up the pigs back in the mid-'80s. We changed from a hog that was driven by lard value to a hog that was driven by lean muscle value, and we really did have to change consumer perception of pork. So, number one, we have done that. The industry has changed people's perception of pork once, 40 years ago. Can we do it again today? Yes, but we're going to have to think about it differently, right? So when we first started thinking about this, you go, okay, for us to change, we have to change the way we think. What do we raise? No. No, we raise flavor, right? Pigs are our vehicle, but at the end of the day, we raise flavor. What? It's not worse than a disc clicking thing. Come on. No, that's true. We raise flavor. So when we started thinking about this, we go, okay, we've been spending the last multiple years promoting the loin. There's nothing wrong with promoting the loin, but we have a portfolio of products that really are the envy of the other industries, right? Everybody wants to be bacon, right? But everybody wants a share of our pie, right? And you start looking at the rest of our portfolio where you go, okay, who wants a pizza without pepperoni? That is called bread with tomato sauce, right? Pepperoni, sausage, ham, salami, all the trendy foods that are charcuterie now, all the dried curds, all pork, right? We have a portfolio of flavor that no one else can equal. So we start there. And we go number two, which is, okay, we are the number one protein in the world, I'll say it, and we are culturally relevant across almost all cultures. So if you want authentic Chinese food, it has to have pork, right? If you want authentic cuisine from around the world, whether it's Asia, Hispanic regions, especially Mexico and Central America, whether it's European, it's pork, right? Because that's where all the dried curds come from. That's where schnitzel comes from, which is the same as tonkatsu. But hey, from around the world, pork has flavor that is culturally relevant. So when you're looking at Zs of millennials who want authentic flavor, we offer authentic flavor. Our other brethren can have their umami, and our other brethren can have health, and we have a healthy alternative too, but what we bring is flavor to that healthy alternative, which is also good. So, we start by changing the way we think. We make flavor. And then number two, we are unapologetic about our product, right? Pork has always had that, yeah, we're pork. Shucks. No shucks. Bacon is something to be proud of, right? We have products that everybody else wants. We have to be unapologetic in how we approach pork. We have a variety of products, a variety of flavors that meets many people's lifestyles and eating occasions. We are good for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and now snack. Because walked into a store the other day and they had a whole wall of chicharrones, different flavors. Now we're snack, right? We meet people where they are, in the form that they are, and everything we do delivers flavor. So that's the number one thing. Second thing is we're thinking about this new process and the new brand and how we're going to go to market. It makes sense for it to be a whole hog program. And what we mean by whole hog is we do have this portfolio of flavor. And we need to promote that effectively because the goal here is to drive hog value, right? We want people paying more for pork across the portfolio, and we want more value for the hogs that we raise, right? Because that's what Checkoff was designed to do. It's a lot easier to do that when we're focusing on the whole hog because there are times in my lifetime where bellies actually drag down carcass value, right? Anybody that's old enough to remember the early 90s, bellies dragged down carcass value. Now bellies are the number one driver of carcass value. So at some point you go, okay, we have all these products. Ham has been a nice bonus over the last couple of years with ham value increasing. We have all these products that we can sell them all and get people to appreciate that and eat across the hog. We have a better opportunity to make more money for our producers, and that's really our goal. And then the number one thing when we change how we talk about our product is we're not the other anything. Right? Why we say we make flavor and why we raise flavor is simple. Other was not an ownable position for the pork industry. Other says you're substitutable for something else, right? First thing in marketing you want to learn is always you have to have an ownable position. What do we own? We own flavors. Not just flavor, but flavors. That portfolio of product that only pork can deliver. Whether it is pepperoni or salami or ham or sausage, you think about all them and they're all unique, they're all different, they all fit into different day parts and different lifestyles, and they go across the world. That is our strength. So that's what we're going to lean into as we move forward. And we're not going to apologize for it, and we're not other anything. Ever again. Okay? So it's a change in attitude. And also what's different this time? Well, like David said, we started this time with the consumer in mind. So instead of us just talking at them, we wanted to understand what drives consumers. And we spent a lot of money on data and understanding and research to make sure that we're going to have the right conversations with the right groups of consumers at the right time and address their needs. Because that's the most effective way to market consumers. What do you need, when do you need it, and what message you need to be delivered. The blanket days, in the old days where we had to do TV in the beginning, right? Who was our first spokesperson? Anybody know who our first spokesperson was 40 years ago? We're 38? Peggy Fleming. She was a figure skater, by the way, years ago. But anyway, we used to be able to do national TV and cover the entire country with one blanket advertising campaign. with one message. That's how things were done back in the day, when you had 3 TV stations and I was the remote control. Get up and teach a channel. Nowadays, we don't have that. We can customize, we can target, we can deliver the right message to the right groups wherever we want to, right? So really it's about that specificity and really delivering the right information at the right time, and we know that. The second thing is we really want to make this it's a very large business. Pork, the whole industry, as this wonderful World Pork Expo shows, is a huge business. So we have to always be driven by data and metrics, right? There's a lot of feel-good things in marketing, pretty creative, really cool colored shirts, all the ooh and ah, but at the end of the day, is it moving the number? So this time around, we are a data-driven system, and we really do want to make sure that that is the point of everything, right? We can fall in love with the creative, but if it's not moving the number, if we're not selling more pork for more value, then it doesn't work. And we change and we move on. That's also the nice thing about a digital forward campaign is we're not married to anything for a long period of time. If we put something up on Facebook or YouTube or anywhere else and it's not effective, we can take it down and try something else, right? And that versatility and that flexibility really does give us a really large competitive advantage. Plus, it allows us to program seasonally around any event, any holiday, or any conversation that's happening online, we can now join in, because that flexibility is really important. And then this time, when we started, we wanted industry support. So in the past, we had created campaigns and then gave them to the industry. Here, look at what we've built. Some people like them, some people didn't. This time we decided to start with the industry as a whole and really build support from the ground up and have the industry have a say into the creation of the new campaign. It helps get buy-in, but more importantly, it helps us not be myopic in how we're looking at the whole category and the whole campaign. So in order to do that, we assembled a market advisory group. And really what this was for is to give us that halo effect. Because at the end of the day, Pork Board doesn't make a pound of product, right? And this logo, while I'm incredibly proud of it, and this tagline, which I'm very happy with, really is an umbrella brand that all of the other brands of pork have to be able to play underneath. It has to be additive, but it has to be inclusive of all and exclusive of none, because everybody pays checkoff that makes pigs, right? So our brand has to be that umbrella brand that covers everybody, that provides a halo for other brands so they can play underneath it, which is important because that's the role we serve. We can change people's minds about the whole category, and then our brands can follow up with specific messaging and specific point of differences to drive differentiation, which drives value. So we put the market advisory group together. The first thing we did is we invited all the major packers to the table, and we had the highest ranking marketing officer for every major packer, and we invited a couple small packers too, just so we had diversity of view, because we want to make sure we hear from everybody. Then we invited some of our key states, large and small, to make sure we had that diversity of view, and to make sure that all the materials and that, and you'll see that from Mia later, that we develop are usable by the states, because we want to make the money go further, and we want to work harder for the same dollar. And then we invited producers, because that's really where the rubber meets the road, and we want to make sure that it makes sense to the people who are investing in this program. And board members, both present and past, right? Because we really wanted to get that perspective and that support. We started that, we stood that up, Market Advisory Group, in August of last year. We had our first meeting. We've had several meetings since, both in person and online. And really what it has done is allowed us, as we built this campaign, as we started going through brand architecture and brand structure and everything the brand would stand for, it allowed us to talk to a wide group of people and build that support from day one, which was really kind of critical. Because once we did launch it, 4 weeks ago, our packers weren't surprised. Everybody had good support and was already executing against it. We provided our marketing plan so everybody could use that either to add to, right, build off of, or market around, right? There's a whole competitive advantage out there, but they know when Pork Board is talking, what we're talking to, and when we're talking about it. And that has really been a huge difference of how we've gone to market ever before in pork. And that really makes us stronger, because our packers then can talk to our retailers. we have a retail team, and they've done extremely good work, but we are a small and mighty team that really does extend. But our industry partners help extend this reach to everybody. And that's really been critical here, is that industry support has amplified the effectiveness of how this campaign is going to go as we move through it. So it's really important. And that's not how we did it in the old days, right? First thing you have to do, always remember, is we have to change how we think about pork. We make a wonderful product, and we should never apologize for that. And then two, once we start, we are now brand ambassadors for the product we make. And we make something that everybody desires, and we make flavor. So we'll turn it over to Jose, and he can talk a little more about the campaign.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Just to be clear, I did wear the right color shirt. Look in the back room over here. So, I wasn't going to let that slide. All right. So, well, good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. Patrick talked a little bit about the whole hog strategy, and what I want to show you real quick is a video that shows how we're bringing this strategy to life. So this is in market right now. It's obviously leveraging pepperoni, but it gives you an idea of what we have in market right now running in the digital space. Thank you.
Pepperoni. That's why pizza exists. Pizza's just the delivery device for those bubbly, crispy-edged slices of savory spice. And that's just one small slice of pork. So sear, sauce, shred, air fry, flip, dip, zest, and discover all the incredible flavors that make up every delicious bite of pork. What are you waiting for? Taste what pork can do.
There you go. Good. So, it's a video that really brings the strategy to life. It really talks about a product that we very well know, that's very tasty, and then how we're trying to elevate the fresh side of the category, because this wasn't something that we sat in a room and say, hey, we really want to go after process just because we felt like it. We have all the data in the world, and our data team is here, and it pointed to that the fresh side of the category needed a lot of help. So what we thought about was, how do we take or really focus on those cuts that have a lot of affinity, a lot of love for the product, or consumer have for the product, and then try to elevate to drive category expansion on the fresh side. So everything that we're doing is with that in mind. So if you see an ad, that's what's really gonna happen. We are focused on three main segments. So our business intelligence team did a segmentation study identifying all these key segments for growing the category. And at the National Pork Board, we're focused on three. Now, the other four are available, all seven are available for our supply chain to be able to focus on them if they feel that they need to do that. But these are the three segments that we feel we can make the greatest impact. So we identified the culinary adventure. Those are folks who are looking for convenience. They're looking to explore more with pork. They're looking for ideas. You're looking the mindful choice maker. It's all about a balanced nutrition. And, we really feel you talk about protein having a moment. We feel there's a great opportunity, and we have a great story to tell from that angle, from the nutrition angle. We have 3 cuts that are, extra lean, certified by the American Heart Association. We have lean cuts. And so we often don't get credit for that, but it's an opportunity for us to really think about how those consumers, or what those consumers want to listen to, or what they want to hear about our product, and really deliver some of those nutrition messaging to them. And then the confident meat eater, they're looking for reliable flavor. They know what they're doing. We just got to keep, turning and burning with them, giving them ideas so they continue to work with pork. But those are the 3 segments that we've determined that give us the greatest opportunity to grow the category. And then in the past, I think, Patrick, you talked a little bit about this, but in the past, our efforts were national in scope, and it was very much traditional media, which at the time worked fine. But with the rise of digital and resources, we just can't really do a blanket approach. So what we did was, through our business intelligence team, we're able to identify, high consumption markets where there's also happen to be low pig production. And so that's critical, because you think about a state like California, there's not a lot of production there. You think about New York, there's not a lot of production. And so we really need to think about how do we get to those consumers that there's a large population over there, but how do we get to them and try to instill in them, all this idea of what port has to offer and then drive into purchase. So that's kind of the national dollars. That's not to say that the other states are not getting coverage, because, and you'll hear from Neil in a little bit here, but his team is focused in really working with all the states and doing more regional, more targeted approach, working with retailers as well in those markets. So in a nutshell, we're covered. Our national dollars are going to more higher consumption, low pig production states, if you will. So that's the whole strategy there. The sphere of influence, this is a slide that basically, if I can sum it up, we didn't do this in a vacuum. So we really got our entire supply chain involved. There's packer, processor, retailers, food service, states. Everybody's involved for one sole purpose, really, how do we get to the consumer effectively? So in the past, there's been some efforts where maybe we went at it alone, weren't as successful. This time we took a different angle. So I think that was important for us to drive the category and make sure that we got support from the entire supply chain to make this effort be successful. And how do we do it? So our strategy, if we will, it's really a two-pronged strategy. So we have it, we identified these two things, what we call Make Pork Cool. This is all really about building excitement about pork. We have been apps, as you said, for the last 8-10 years. So you really can start on the consideration, which is the make them drool. You have to create awareness about your product and really get to be top of mind with consumers, so they are considering you at the end of the day. So all the work that we do, and you'll see some example, starts with the awareness phase, try to get the product out there, make people aware of it, and then how do we take that then and drive into purchase intent, which is to make them cool. Because at the end of the day, and we have a lot of the conversation with our board of directors, they're very supportive of all we're doing, obviously, but they also want to see results. What is the return on investment and all the work that we're doing? And so we can't really just focus on awareness, because it wouldn't work from a marketing perspective, but then we can't really then hit on the sales, which at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for, driving the category forward. Oops, go back. Okay, so Make Pork Cool. Here's some examples that we have live right now. These are on social media. A lot of the content very much on the awareness side, what we're trying to do, just digital integrations in the digital space. We have, various platforms, whether it's TikTok, which is big with the younger generation, which is our core market, right? That Zennial, the Gen Z and Millennial, that's our core audience. So these are some example of things that we have here in market that are driving for the awareness. We have over here a banner that drives people back to our website. We have a really cool website that we just designed. So if you haven't checked that out, please do so. You'll like that. So you'll see a lot of this creative in the digital space, but if you check our social media platforms, you'll see. And I think what's really important about this is that you're seeing the whole strategy, the whole hog strategy coming to life. If you start with bacon, you can also go back to a pork chop. So really connecting the dots to consumers, because we also know when we've done research, you ask consumers, hey, do you eat pork? How many times do you eat pork a day? They'll say, 5 or 6 times. Okay, tell me the cuts. They'll say, I eat pork chop or whatever. But then they don't think about bacon or sausage. And when you remind them of that, there's more consumption going on. So we're trying to use that leverage to try to connect the dots for the consumer, that if you're eating, bacon, there's more to pork than just bacon. So really connecting it for the consumer. The Make It Drool, this is really how do we stay in front of the consumer? And a lot of this work really drives people to retail, what we're doing. So yeah, you'll see some things on streaming devices. So think about Hulu, Peacock. I mean, we're going to have a presence there because our data shows that a lot of the younger generations over-index in that digital consumption. So we'll have that, but we also have a lot of the ads, a lot of the investment going to driving people specifically to Kroger and Walmart. Why? They're the two biggest retailers. There's a lot of volume being moved there. And plus Walmart is everywhere, right? So we're able to scale that. And really what's important about that is we can tell what products people are buying, how much, based on the investment, how much money we got in return, and then really get back to that return on ad spend, which we can share those results back with producers. So it's a really important part of our plan. There's also the ability to say, if we were promoting pork chops, that it had a halo effect in other products. So we're able to say, we promoted product, but people also added to the cart bacon and sausage and shoulder, for example. So we're able to quantify that as well. So consumer campaign in action, these are actual things that we have in market right now. We have social media, as I talked a little bit about that, paid search, the SEO, search engine optimization, SEO. So when you Google something, you say fresh pork, now we're coming up at the top, which is something that, there's a million recipes out there, but you got to put money behind that so that your product and your protein comes up. So we have a big effort on that. Again, driving people to retail, it's critical. And, we have a lot of these videos. We have even audio spots where we're, being placed in platform where younger consumers are listening to. And so there's a lot of those activations going on. And again, we can measure, just beyond impression and reach, we can measure what action consumers are taking. This is our website. I encourage you to go to that website. It's really, really cool. It looks really nice on your mobile and then your desktop. But, the colors are amazing. You'll see the same video that you almost saw there. Although it starts with ribs, that one, I believe. But just really messaging around flavor, and there's a section about nutrition. So we got 3 segments. So we have sections there that if you're looking for nutritious option, you can go there and find those more nutritious focused recipes. So really, really cool stuff we have going on. We're just really trying to give the consumer a better experience, and really what they're seeing in the digital space, they can see it in our homepage with the website. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is using pork to sell more pork. We know the affinity that exists with the processed side. How do we get that affinity in the fresh side? Because at the end of the day, that's really what's missing in this case. I mean, there's a lot of people that are consuming processed. The fresh side needs a lot of help. And so we're trying to connect the dots for the consumer. And then here's some example of things that you may see. I don't know if you've been to our tent, but there's a lot of creative here. What I would tell you about the creative, this was done by design. So when we first started this, we worked with our research team and we tested messaging, we tested the tagline, we tested the colors. And initially we had darker colors on our approach, and we heard loud and clear from our consumers, right, Sarah? They did not want to see those colors. The younger consumer did not resonate with those darker colors. And if you think about all the time that this consumer spent online and all these brands that are trying to reach younger consumer, it's bright and vivid colors, right? So when we change those, we're getting great results by using, this kind of very awesome colors, which we're wearing today, actually. So, and then I think that's it for me. I think I would say one thing about this slide here that I forgot to mention. So you'll see a lot of pork being used as an ingredient. Traditionally, we focus a lot center of the plate, but our research tells us again that consumers are eating differently. They're eating pork as an ingredient. So a lot of the recipes that were coming up, a lot of the content is pork as an ingredient. That's how, if you look at Latin American market, you look at the Asian markets, you ever been to a Chinese restaurant? It's all pork as an ingredient, right? And they have tremendous affinity. So as this younger consumer gets more diverse, you have to meet them where they're at, right? And that's what they're looking for. That's not to say we're going to walk away from a pork chop in the middle of your plate, but I think we have to expand our offering for consumers so that we're meeting their needs. And I think that's a big part of our campaign. With that, Mia, turn it over to you.
All right, so how many people know how many state associations there are in the US? Not any of the bright colored shirts. I know you guys know. How many of you know how many state associations we have? Any guesses? Just throw something out. We have 42 state associations. And that is my role, to work with the state associations to get them all the creative for the national campaign that we are utilizing so they can utilize those resources to help amplify the campaign. So when we're thinking about that, we want our states to utilize our resources, to utilize our creative assets, because that is going to make us into an even greater force, right? That is going to be our state associations are boots on the ground, and that is how you're going to amplify the campaign exponentially, by having those states utilize your creative. And so that brand can start getting a larger audience. So, you know, the individual state associations have their own social media pages. They have their own activities that they're doing, which you can see on the screen. We have things like Ohio supporting ESPN's College World Series. And so that is going on right now through the end of June. And they're utilizing our assets and combined with their logo to make the campaign really sing. And we also have Maryland doing a baseball promotion this summer with Knock Pork Out of the Park. And we also have our lovely Olivia from Iowa Pork modeling some of our swag. But we've been on Twin Cities Live through Minnesota Pork. We've had all opportunities to amplify the campaign in different activations for just in this 1 month that we have been live. And so that is what I want to drive home to you, is that our states are really adopting this campaign and they're really excited. We are constantly working on new executions for the campaign that our states are having just all kinds of creative ideas, and we're helping them execute those ideas. So that is how you will start to see the campaign come to life in other areas outside of what Jose talked about with the national campaign, okay? So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Neil, and leave it there, sorry. And he will talk about food service and retail activations, as well as some of the activations that we have done with our shopper marketing partners with Ad Adapted Chicory and Digits.
Thanks, Mia. So I wanted to talk just a little bit, and I think it's important to point out we're 4 weeks old, right? We've been in market for 4 weeks. I will tell you the engagement around this campaign has been very, very exciting. And I'm just going to share a few examples of where we're active in market today. We've talked a lot about retail. I've got a couple food service examples first. We work with a chef consultant who works with retail chain accounts, and Charlie's come up with a couple really cool ideas here, but we've got a hot honey pulled pork sandwich at Dickey's Barbecue. You can see the tagline and the brand right there in the right-hand corner. The one on the right is City Barbecue, right? A lot of chains are looking for ways to how do they differentiate themselves in the marketplace. Restaurants' goal is to put butts in seats and drive traffic. And this is an LTO, which is a limited time offer at City Barbecue on pork belly burn ends. So belly's not all about bacon, and there's a lot of really cool flavors that are driving behind some of the things that are happening in food service. And we're just getting started there. These are some examples of digital ads that we're running with ACF. ACF is the American Culinary Federation. So they've got 100 state chapters around the country. They've got 17,000 chef members. So we're communicating Taste What Pork can do in that chef community, right? Because it all starts on the culinary side, on the restaurant side of the business. But again, just wanted to share some examples of where we're showing up. I will tell you, everybody that we show this to, they love the colors. They love the food photography. So it's really spot on. Now let's talk a little bit about retail. Who here is from Iowa or here in the central Midwest? A few of you. So you've heard of Hy-Vee, right? Hy-Vee is a retail partner that is so supportive of our pork producers. We're working with them on a rib promotion. So this is all point of sale that will go into stores starting next week. So there's banners, there's Ironman signs, there's posters, there's counter cards. So these are just examples of some of the things that are happening. And if you note there, it says shop quality meat from our local Midwest pork producers. And I will tell you, Mia talked about state associations. Iowa, the largest pork producing state in the nation, we have a great relationship, and they partner with us on our relationship with Hy-Vee, along with 6 other states that Hy-Vee has stores in. So that's where we take the budget and expand it further, right? We're making the dollars go further. Schnucks is a retailer in St. Louis, smaller retailer, but very supportive of pork and the pork industry. And I always say this, right? When we talk to a retailer, I always tell them, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm just here to help you sell more of what you already have. So this is an example of an ad. I will get feedback of, ooh, boy, we'd like to see loins higher than $149 a pound. This is a business where you have to move product through the pipeline. But what Schnucks is doing is using an ad like this to drive traffic into their stores. And the one thing a retailer always wants to do is build the basket, right? They want the shopper to put more groceries in the basket, and this is a way to do that. So they've been a really good partner, but our brand is proudly displayed there in the ad. How many have seen the semi-trailer that's back here? That's not a digital application. I was sitting here thinking, man, this is a digital forward approach, and I put a billboard in the back parking lot. Fairway is a retailer here in Iowa. They've expanded. They've got stores in 7 states now. I always say I'm a Fairway alum. I worked in the meat department when I was in college, but we wrap this trailer. This thing will roll around the Midwest. It can roll out to California, but it's really that billboard effect for the campaign. And again, a small regional retailer that's very supportive of our pork producers. And if you haven't had a chance to see it, literally it's sitting right back here by the big grill, so it's pretty impressive. The other way that we're working to expand the dollars, right, the budget dollars that we're using against this campaign is finding partnerships. This is a partnerships with Reese's. Has anybody seen the convenient sides in the stores? Mashed potatoes, macaroni and cheese. So we're doing a promotion, a joint promotion with them, with these retailers. So you'll see Hannaford, which is out in the Northeast. They're part of Ahold Delhaize. You'll see Schnucks there in St. Louis, Giant Eagles out of Pittsburgh. You've got Southeast Grocers, which is in the Southeast, and then the one in the corner is Publix, which is a large retailer. They have approximately 1,400 stores. These labels will be on pack, and when the consumer buys the package of pork, they save $1 on the Reese's side. We talked about convenience, right? The consumer that wants that convenient application. Now, the cool part about making budgets extend farther is Reese's is covering 100% of the redemption, right? Center store brands have more budget dollars, they have more margin in their products, so they're covering the cost of that. We paid 40% of the cost of printing the labels. The retailers are excited about it, because they're like, ooh, we can put it in the ad, we can build a bunker display, so a secondary display. So it's how do you inspire that consumer to put product in the cart at that point of purchase, right? Everybody's busy, we heard that, our kids are busier than us. So then that's the idea of how we can help them solve that meal solution. So we've got those things coming this summer. And most of those are gonna run around Father's Day, one's in July, and then one will be in September. This is an example. Mia mentioned digital campaigns. So we work with a company called Chicory, and it's a search-based search engine, right? So they're targeting consumers with ads when they're searching for recipes. So when they're in that mindset of food, we can serve them up ads for pork. One of the cool things that we're doing with this one is we're doing conquesting. Anybody know what that is? So when somebody's searching for a recipe for a poultry, we can serve them an ad for pork, right? And have them think about, what do I want to do for dinner? The important part of all these campaigns is a shoppable link. So you think about the shop now, that will take it right to the cart, and then we can measure on the backside. Jose talked about the importance of return on investment. We can measure all the way back to they put it in their cart, they purchased the product, and then we can measure, right? And we know how many are new consumers, how many other items. Jose mentioned the halo effect. So there's all of those elements that we can measure. This is another example of digital ads with a company that we work with that can target specific consumer groups in specific markets. You'll just notice it says add to cart, but within that would populate the retailers. So we know where they're shopping, and then we can serve them, and they have the option to pick the retailer that they want to add it to their cart. So again, a very different approach to the way media was run in the past, but really working. 4 weeks old, right? So we've got meetings set up. I will say we've met with 8 of the top 10 retailers in the country in person. We've got more meetings this month, and we're just getting started. So this is a really fun, exciting campaign. I will tell you, everybody we've met with, they love it. Can we use the photography? Can we use the branding? So we're just getting started. And with that, I'm going to open it up for questions, and bacon's just the beginning, right? You guys can clap for me, too.
First off, I love it all, but I do have a couple questions. Back in the day when I was on the committee a long time ago, I was part of a focus group where they did it on pork safety. And I'm just wondering, have we overcome much of that, especially in the cultural? You know, I sat in on some focus groups where some of the cultural areas, they had a lot of concern about pork safety. Where are we at with that today? Is it better? Is it somewhat better? Is it a lot better?
I'll give you the part of the answer, and maybe Sarah, in terms of the work you guys are seeing, you can chime in. There still are some challenges, particularly when you think about the multicultural audiences, right? And a lot of that stuff, it happens because we have a lot better biosecurity here than they do in other countries. That's a fact. So it's ingrained in their culture, right? It's not uncommon for Latinos to all of a sudden, you know, when they buy pork, rinse it, right? Or they will rinse it in vinegar. I've seen that. And so part of it is because of safety issues, right? So the way we work with that is we have the 145, which shows a little bit of pink, right? And we talk about how it's safe to eat and all those things. But for specific markets, we give them a range, 145 to 160, because they're eating a lot of pork already. And I believe that if you're over-indexing in pork and you tend to fry your product because that's how you like it, whether you have those perceptions or not, I shouldn't tell you how to cook your product, right? Or force you, because you're already eating a lot. Now, we try to educate to the extent that we can without getting too personal, if you will. But those challenges are happening because of cultural things, right? So that's still there. I think what we try to do is, in marketing, we chose to start with the positives rather than the negatives, because we know the reasons why they like the product. We know why they eat it, how they eat it. So we start with that, and then we instill confidence as a secondary message that talks about how lean it is and how good it is for you and your family and things like that. So it is still present. I don't think that's a long-held perception that I think it will be very difficult to change for years and years, decades to happen, for that to happen. So I know our research team, they do a lot of research and they track that stuff. I don't think we've seen any movement there.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Jose. I think you did a nice job covering it, but I'll just add that when we did the consumer segmentation work, we did find that there are definitely segments that are more concerned about food safety. I'll use a couple examples of the 3 targets that we're using for the launch of the campaign. If you think about confident meat eaters, they're very confident in cooking meat. They know, what they need to do when they put a piece of meat on the grill, how to cook pork. They just feel really confident in the choices that they're doing. On the other hand, a mindful choice maker is really concerned about food safety. And so that may be a group that, as Jose mentioned, from a secondary messaging perspective, we may just continue to weave that in and be really targeted at that messaging angle. And I think, as he mentioned, the multicultural consumers are something that we continue to see, that we know that those are just inherent concerns that they have that are generational. And it's just something that we'll continue to keep, an eye on and reinforce those beliefs.
Yeah, I mean, they have the concern, but they still over-index and eat a ton of product. So it's kind of like, yeah, I'm concerned, but guess what? I'm going to eat it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, just, that's all good.
I have one more question. So I understand we want pork to be seen as a value product. The more we discount it, the harder it is to get them to buy at the price we want them to. But I'm also concerned about exports right now. So do we have backup plans to go into store and try and discount if all of a sudden we have a whole bunch more pork on the market than we're used to having?
I'm going to turn that over to you guys. I would just say this. We don't know. We are an affordable protein. We're not a cheap protein. We're not wanting to discount anything. And that's our goal. But
Yeah, maybe I'll add a little context. And in terms of backup plan, I would say, no, there's not a set backup plan. But here's what I would say about this current marketplace we're in is, actually, I think that this national campaign, as I talked about in the beginning, it really resonates why we need to be focusing on the domestic market. Because if you put any percentage of product at risk, right? What if something would happen and we were to put 1% of what we export back on the domestic market? That's a lot of product, right? So if pork is relevant, right, with that consumer already, and it's part of their decision set, your goal there, right, would be is that you are quite literally eating up that supply. So what the retailers and food service companies do on pricing is something we can't talk about. But certainly, I think that it actually exacerbates why we need a domestic campaign. I mentioned in the beginning, we've had our foot on the pedal in exports for 25, 30 years, done an exceptionally good job. You put that same focus on the 20 billion pounds of product we're trying to move domestically, you're actually securing the long-term position of pork without using price as your only lever.
I'm just going to add one piece of color coming from the packer world, right? I mean, for years, we've had a push strategy, right? We push product into the marketplace and find a price to clear it. Now we're trying to create that pull strategy, right? So you have that consumer affinity. And again, the idea is to sell more pork at a higher price more often.
There's got to be more questions, unless you want me to call on you.
Hello, pork friends. I don't really have a question, more comment, and just a congratulations on the campaign. I'm from Australian Pork, so we do marketing comms down under. We're your cousins. A lot of similarities, and to go through a huge sort of brand evolution like this, and with such success in just 4 weeks, is phenomenal. So yeah, good job.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. With
Thanks,
the cool
cousin.
accent. Thank you. That's going to be very hard to follow. So, I do want to say something, though, and this is not about Australian pork, but it is something that's very interesting, is this is actually a trend you're starting to see the world over, this importance of pork. When you think about what's happening in North America right now, in the last 6 weeks, Canada pork, U.S. pork, and Mexican pork have all launched a new domestic consumer marketing campaign. It's not just, right? It's not just us. I mean, and here's what I would say to that is, when you have all of North America throwing money into elevating pork, right? Because they see many of the same, there's cultural differences, there's all kinds of consumer nuances between them. But I think that speaks volumes to people recognizing the transformational moment. I was in Mexico last week at Opermex, and those producers, it was like verbatim language right? We got to focus on Gen Z. We got to focus on millennials. We got to think about flavor. There's an opportunity right now for pork as a protein. It's very culturally irrelevant, but we need to remind them why they need to eat more of it. So I think that speaks volumes to maybe just support what's happening in this new campaign here.
All right. Congratulations. I'm actually from Jamaica. We're from Hi-Pro. We're an animal livestock feed company. So pork is a big part of, the pig feed primarily is part of what we do. And we've seen where there is an issue from a demand perspective and a consumption perspective in Jamaica. I think what we've been trying to kind of find out, and I've taken a lot in terms of what you guys have put here, is, making pork. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've garnered from here, making it attractive. Yeah, making it attractive because, from a preparation perspective, also leading to, obviously the taste factor is one of the comparative advantages that pork has. In respect to like chicken, Jamaica is full chicken country. When you talk about consumption of meat kind, chicken is over 90%. So what we're trying to do is increasing the consumption. So a campaign like this is motivating us to build off similarities and trying to, action that within the Gen Z populace, the millennials, and allowing them to say, all right, this is an alternative to chicken, but also it is not an alternative to chicken. Just like what you highlighted, it's not a other meat kind. It stands alone. Eat pork. It tastes great. So I think you guys have been doing a really good job. And if it's 4 weeks in and it looks like this, I can only imagine. So we'll definitely keep an eye on it and take similarities, and maybe we're going to do our own campaign in Jamaica for pork. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you. And I would say you're from Jamaica, I'm from Puerto Rico, so we're island brothers. We got the Australian guy who is my cousin, so we're in a good spot. Right. But I would say this to you is we went through that too. I mean, we play in the space of inspiration, creativity, all stuff that was done and make the impact that it did. We went the nutrition side first, but what we never did was attack it from a number one attribute for our product, which is taste and flavor, right? So that's our differentiator. We have 111 flavors, and our nutrition team identified that, so we can make that claim, right? So to me, people buy the product because they like it. It got to taste good, right? And knowing I've been to Jamaica, Negril, myself, and when you go there, that anything jerk, right? It's amazing, but it's got to be flavorful. Flavor is a big driver, right? So your pork is amazing. So I would say just keep pushing them. Yeah, taste and flavor. The more, if we get that in the Caribbean, that'd be amazing.
Okay. So we asked our question because we also wanted to enter the best accent competition.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
No, but I have a real question.
We're in the minority.
I actually have a real question. So I'm the marketing manager at Hi-Pro. This was very insightful for me. Love everything. I was over here taking lots of photos because I am inspired. I just want to know, what are your KPIs for this campaign? What are your success factors, and what are you looking for specifically to say, okay, this campaign was successful?
So I'll talk about the metrics for the campaign, and maybe you'll want to talk about the PPI. So we have, we want to increase household penetration. We want to increase the buy rate, occasion and things like that. But we also have 3 things that we measure as KPI, which is permission to eat. Are people, feeling good about what they're buying or what they're eating? And so we are able to correlate some things there. We have believability. Is the content that we're putting out there, is it believable? Are people picking it up? The media is picking it up, for example. And then we have purchase intent, which is a very critical one, right? Our people, we don't sell a physical product here, but we work with partners to make sure we sell the product or they sell the product, right? So there's intent to purchase. right? So when you think about some of the work that Neil talked about and I did in terms of driving people to retail, we can tell whether people are buying the product or not. So that's a huge metric for us, but that's at the campaign specific. Now, there's a different concept here about are we driving the category and obviously profitability for our producers. And David, maybe you want to talk about the PPI.
Sure. So, you know, when we start thinking about how to measure, some of our board members are in the room right now. And one of the things that we really are holding ourselves accountable for, but our board especially, is there's always this question about the checkoff in the U.S., right? So our producers are paying into a mandatory checkoff. We're using that money, as I said in the beginning, right, for promotion, research, and education. So it is huge to us and huge to the obligation we have to the farmers who we represent, whose dollars we are spending to do this, that we can prove a return on investment. And so when Jose mentions KPIs, you know, a lot of what he talked about there was attitudinal. Okay, so when you think about those attitudinal things like impressions and clicks and everything else, sounds good, looks good, doesn't matter if nobody buys it, right? So we are actually building out a next level step, if you will, from a KPI standpoint, and we're, because we love cool acronyms, right? It's we actually are calling it the Pork Power Index, but we're working with leading economists, we're working with our agency, we're working with our own internal team, and really what this is we are building an index, and we really must be able to do this, that is, we've got to create a program. If it doesn't work, we need to stop and readjust, right? But it has to be something that drives value back to our farmers, period. So I'm going to say that again, right? We work for farmers. It's their money. So you hear us talking a lot about retailers and packers and all these other individuals, and some people, I've heard this a million times, right? The thing is, the whole value chain is involved, right? You can't raise a pig if you don't have a place to slaughter it, right? And the guys that slaughter it can't do anything if they don't have a store to sell it in. So that's a crucial aspect that we bring all these people together. That's why Patrick mentioned the Marketing Advisory Group. But we're building out an index that actually quantifies the value paid back to producers through the entire, so let's just call it a farm to fork approach from a KPI standpoint. So we're already building that out. And to give you an example, Lee Scholes from EverAg, Glenn Tonzer from K-State, Dermot Hayes from Iowa State, our team from Barkley, and our group internally is the group of individuals who are working on that. So our staff, all of our staff. So that KPI piece is critical. And it's a great question because how you quantify growth, right? We say, well, we just want more. We want more. But you've got to find value in more and what that means. And without KPIs, we can't make strategic decisions on how we change and how we start to go down different paths. So thank you for that question.
Dr. Newman, just to comment, it's a disgrace that the spread between pork and beef cutout is at record highs. So it's going to be easy from a producer standpoint to measure the success here because we're better than this.
Amen. It's true, but I also will say, and this is really important, is that, and I mentioned this earlier, but part of that transformational time, there is an equation in there about competing proteins, right? There's a tremendous margin opportunity with pork, but pork has an ownable position, and I think that goes back to something we were saying a minute ago. There's one thing about a pig that is totally awesome, okay, in my standpoint. And that's why Jose mentioned this 111 flavors. We have nutrition research that says, right, there's 111 separate flavors of pork. Forget that because you're not going to tease out each one like a sommelier, you know, like, ooh, I'm getting a little nuttiness here. That's not what we're saying. But here's what I am saying. Sausage eats different than bacon, eats different than a pork steak, eats different than a pork chop, eats different than an ossobuco shank, right? Every one of those meals is an entirely different eating experience. You don't get that with other proteins. You can't find that many separate dishes that are that awesome. And it's not the sauce. It's not just what you put on it, right? It's not just the seasoning. It's not a vehicle for flavor, as some people might say, right? It's actually the flavor of the meat, the fat, right? And what drives it. So from one end of that hog to the other, you've got a really wide range of experiences. And this is about celebrating that and not trying to compare us to anybody else, because we do have an unapologetic position of just being the owners of flavor.
Dr. Newman, I have a question quick
Oh,
for
hi.
you. You have a producer audience. The producers have invested into this campaign. Campaign's here, it's launched. What do producers do next? How can they come along with us on this and help take it to the next level?
Yeah, 2 words. Get excited. Right? We have something to be really proud of. And I grew up in the hog business. That's all my parents have ever done their whole life. They were hog farmers, right? I mean, there is something to celebrate more than just saying, well, we didn't get that disease today. Okay, I've been in the hog, I understand the impact of PRRS and the threat of foreign animal disease and the environment, and right now we're moving into the hot summer and all these other things, the metrics we talk about every day from a production standpoint, but we also sell a really awesome product. And we should celebrate that. So, if you can't be proud of the only thing you make, that's a little awkward, right? So, I mean, this is about becoming an ambassador for the brand, because you're not going to get it just from the staff at the pork board. If you can't tell, we actually do really love what we do, and we eat a ton of pork, okay? But it's about the farmers and the people we represent and the packer processors and the retailers and everybody else getting excited about it. So that would be my request, is be proud of the only thing you make, celebrate the campaign, and let's go taste what pork can do, right? I've never done that.
And on that note, I encourage you all to run the QR code to stay up to date with the latest pork news.